bless. We are here yet another day. We got more reading to do, and it should be a quick. This one might be a little speedy, but we're gonna read through. We have the devotional video, links in the description of this, and then we're gonna read Leviticus 2 chapters, 14 and 15, and then we're gonna go into Psalms. And yeah, that's about it. Yesterday was more. I'm so blanking. What did we read through yesterday? Wow. Skin diseases and like how to take care of the tribe of Israel and to how to pay attention to those details and pretty much govern the cleanliness of the clothing of people's bodies and really examining and looking out for these skin diseases so proper quarantine methods can be put into place. That's what reading yesterday's reading was about. And today we're just gonna jump right into it. The devotional video is it's a video that goes over the laws in the Old Testament and what their purpose was. So in this video, we explore the importance of the ancient laws in the Old Testament. Why are they in the Bible? And what do they do? What do they say to followers of Jesus? We explore how they fulfill a strategic purpose in one key phrase of the biblical story, leading up to Jesus, who fulfilled the law and summarized it in the call to love God and love your neighbor as yourself. So there are a lot of laws spread throughout the Bible. I think the video expressed that the laws are about 116. Those are not the numbers. 613 laws overall in the early portion of the Bible. There's no way we as humanity, we're just not capable of holding true to 613 laws all at once. Just not. But each purpose of the law was like kind of modified so that the point of the law was to love truly, loving your neighbor, loving your enemy, loving yourself. And all of those all those scattered laws throughout the story was to get you to the purpose of loving your neighbor, loving your enemy, and loving yourself. This here, it further goes to explain that, like, we can't follow the laws of God until we have a change of heart, a desire of the soft, open, God-seeking heart that's like, okay, following these laws is just my desire, not my chores. Like, not. So it makes it a little easier. I don't know. But God working through us does actually help the drive for us to continue to stay more and more in line with his laws and the way he operates. So yeah, we're gonna hop into Leviticus 14. It's called Cleansing from Skin Diseases. And the Lord said to Moses, the following instructions are for those seeking ceremonial purification from a skin disease. Those who have been healed must be brought to the priest, who will examine them at the place outside the camp. If the priest finds that someone has been healed of a serious skin disease, he will perform a purification ceremony using 2 live birds that are ceremonially clean, a stick of cedar, and some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. The priest will order that 1 bird be slaughtered over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the live bird, the cedar stick, and the scarlet yarn and the hyssop branch, and dip them into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. The priest will then sprinkle the branch of the dead bird 7 times on the person being purified of the skin disease. When the priest has been purified, the person When the priest has purified the person, he will release the bird in the open field to fly away. I'm not really sure what the hyssop branch is, but this is about the second time it's come into play. The first time it came into play was when we did the plague situations. During Passover, they needed to dip the hyssop branch in the lamb and paint the doorways with that in the lamb blood and dip brush the doors. The person being purified must then wash their clothes, shave off all their hair, and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean and may return to the camp. However, they must remain outside their tents for 7 days. On the seventh day, they must again shave all the hair from their heads, including the hair of their beard and eyebrows. Ooh, okay. All of it's gotta go. They must also wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, each person being purified must bring 2 male lambs and a 1-year-old female lamb, all with no defects, along with the grain offering of 6 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil in a cup of olive oil. Then the officiating priest will present that person for purification along with the offerings before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take one of the male lambs and the olive oil and present them as a guilt offering, lifting them up as a special offering before the Lord. He will then slaughter the male lamb in the sacred area where the sin offerings and the burnt offerings are slaughtered. As with the sin offering, the guilt offerings belong to the priest. It is the most holy offering. The priest will then take some of the blood of the guilt offering and apply it to the lobe of the right ear and the thumb of the right hand and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. So this is what they did with the applying of the blood to the high priest, and so Aaron's and his sons and descendants of that, the high priest and the priest. Then the priest will pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil, and he will dip his right finger into the oil in his palm and sprinkle some of it with his finger 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is on the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in the hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest must present the sin offering to purify the person who was cured of skin disease. After that, the priest will slaughter the burnt offering and the offering. After that, the priest will slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person who was healed, and the person will be ceremonially clean. But anyone who is too poor and cannot afford these offerings may bring 1 male lamb for a guilt offering to be lifted up as a special offering for purification. The person must also bring 2 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil for the grain offering and a cup of olive oil. The offering must also include 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. 1 of the pair must be used for the sin offering and the other for the burnt offering. On the 8th day of the purification ceremony, the person being purified must bring the offerings to the priest in the Lord's presence at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take the lamb for the guilt offering, along with the olive oil, and lift them up as a special offering to the Lord. Then the priest will slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering. He will take some of its blood and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will also pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger into the oil in his palm and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is on the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot of the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest will offer the 2 turtle doves or the 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. One of them is for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering to be presented along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. These are the instructions for purification for those who have recovered from a serious skin disease, but who cannot afford to bring the offerings normally required for the ceremony of purification. I like that there is a separate purification method set aside for someone who isn't well off enough to acquire that, I guess, pricier offering. But I also like that offering is set aside so like people know, like, wait a minute, you can afford the normal offering, so why are you over here trying to bring in 2 turtle doves as if you couldn't, like, and the Lord knows what you can afford. He knows exactly what provisions you have because he provided them for you. Treatment of contaminated houses. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when you arrive in Canaan, the land I am giving you as your own possession, I may contaminate some of the houses in your land with mildew. The owner of such a house must then go to the priest and say, it appears that my house has some kind of mildew. Before the priest goes in to inspect the house, he must have the house emptied so nothing inside will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. Then the priest will go in and examine the mildew on the walls. If he finds greenish or reddish streaks and the contamination appears to go deeper than the wall's surface, the priest will step outside the door and put the house in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must return in for another inspection. If he finds that the mildew on the walls of the house has spread, the priest must order that some stones from those areas be removed. The contaminated material will then be taken outside and the town to the area designated as ceremonially unclean. Next, the inside walls of the entire house must be scraped thoroughly and the scrapings dumped in the unclean place outside the town. Other stones will be brought in to replace the ones that were removed, and the walls will be replastered. But if the mildew reappears after all the stones have been replaced and the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest must return and inspect the house again. If he finds that the mildew has spread, the walls are clearly contaminated with serious mildew, and the house is defiled, it must be torn down, and all its stones, timbers, and plaster must be carried out of the town to the place designated as ceremonially unclean. Those who enter the house during the period of quarantine will be ceremonially unclean until evening, and all who sleep or eat in the house must wash their clothing. But if the priest returns for his inspection and finds that the mildew has not reappeared in the house after the fresh plastering, he will pronounce it clean because the mildew is clearly gone. To purify the house, the priest must take 2 birds, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. He will slaughter one of the birds over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the cedar stick, the hyssop branch, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird and dip them into the blood of the slaughtered bird and into the fresh water. Then he will sprinkle the house 7 times. When the priest has purified the house in exactly this way, he will release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. Through this process, the priest will purify the house and it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with serious skin diseases, including scabby sores and mildew, whether on clothing or in a house, and a swelling of the skin, a rash, or discolored skin. This procedure will determine whether a person or object is ceremonially clean or unclean. These are the instructions regarding skin disease and mildew. So God's going through a lot of emphasis here just to make sure, again, I feel like it's just make sure, hey, make sure your houses are safe. Have your houses inspected. Have the awareness of this. This is how you clean it. This is how you keep it safe. This is how you remove contaminated objects from your space, because living in a house with mold and mildew, it's a sanitary violation. I feel like this is the original HACCP. This is the original making sure everything is clean and safe to exist around and cook in and eat in and live in, the original OSHA. Bodily discharges. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Give the following instructions to the people of Israel." We've been to Leviticus 15, if you're keeping track. Leviticus 16, verse 2. Any man who has a bodily discharge is ceremonially unclean. This defilement is caused by his discharge, whether the discharge continues or stops. In either case, the man is unclean. Any bed on which the man with the discharge lies and anything on which he sits will be ceremonially unclean. So if you touch the man's bed, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If you sit where the man with this discharge has sat, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If you touch the man with the discharge, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If the man spits on you, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. Any saddle blanket on which the man rides will be ceremonially unclean. If you touch anything that was under the man, you will be unclean until evening. You must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If the man touches you without first rinsing his hands, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. Any clay pot the man touches must be broken, and any wooden utensil the man touches must be rinsed with water. When the man with the discharge is healed, he must count off 7 days for a period of purification. Then he must wash his clothes and bathe himself in fresh water, and he will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, he must get 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons and come before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle and give his offerings to the priest. The priest will offer the bird for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the man before the Lord for his discharge. Oh, I'm so not going to remember names. And I feel like I'm barely going to remember the scenario. No, I got this. I think way back when, There was an issue with one of Jacob's sons. Jacob's son? No. There was an issue with one of Abraham's sons. Okay, I'm not gonna remember specifics. I feel like it's gonna come to me. If you're gonna come to me, come to me. Come on, you got this. But there was the wife of one of I want to say Isaac's sons, someone's sons early in the lineage. This happened in Genesis, right? And then one of the sons dies, and the wife gets passed on to the second oldest son, and it is the second oldest son's job to birth a child and give it to and name it in honor of the first son that just previously died. And that son, in that way, the son would have the one that passed away would have a son, and his lineage would continue. But then the second son didn't want to do that. He didn't want to birth a son for his older brother. His posthumously birth a son for his older brother. And so every time he sleeps with the wife, he pulls out and ejaculates on the floor. And in doing so, God was like, I deem this evil, and killed him. So now 2 sons are gone, and the father in mourning sends off the wife. He's like, go, return to your father, live as a widow, and when my oldest son is of age, I will send it. No, when my youngest son is of age, I will send him to you to get married. But that was a lie. He didn't want to do that because he had already lost such and such sons. He already lost his kids to give his kids to this woman. He was just afraid that this woman was the cause of losing another son. But then eventually he ends up sleeping with this woman because she finds out that he's not gonna let his youngest son marry her, and is just gonna leave her, and then leave her to be widowed, and then he ends up siring a child with her. Yeah, anyway, I say all that to say this reminds me of why the second son who refused to birth a son in honor of his older brother died was probably because of all of the purposeful pull out onto the ground discharge. And this is why it was deemed so evil that it was punished by his death. But that's the correlation I'm making mentally. Leviticus 15:16. When a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his entire body in water, and he will remain ceremonially unclean until the next evening. Any clothing or leather with semen on it must be washed in water, and it will remain unclean until evening. After a man and a woman have sexual intercourse, they must each bathe in water, and they will remain unclean until the next evening. Whenever a woman has her menstrual period, she will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days. Anyone who touches her during that time must be unclean until evening. Anything on which the woman lies or sits during that time of her period will be unclean. If any of you touch her bed, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. If you touch any object she has sat on, you must wash your clothes and bathe yourself in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. This includes her bed or any object she has sat on. You will be unclean until evening if you touch it. If a man has sexual intercourse with her and her blood touches him, Her menstrual impurity will be transmitted to him. He will remain unclean for 7 days, and any bed on which he lies will be unclean. If a woman has a flow of blood for many days that is unrelated to her menstrual period, or if the blood continues beyond the normal period, she is ceremonially unclean. As during her menstrual period, the woman will be unclean as long as the discharge continues. Any bed she lies on and any object she sits on during that time will be unclean, just as during her normal menstrual period. If any of you touch these things, you will be ceremonially unclean. You must wash your clothes and bathe yourselves in water, and you will remain unclean until evening. When the woman's bleeding stops, she must count off 7 days, then she will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, she must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons and present them to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will offer one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. Through this process, the priest will purify her before the Lord for the ceremonial impurity caused by her bleeding. This is how you will guard the people of Israel from ceremonial uncleanliness, but this is uncleanness. That's the word. This is how you will guard the people of Israel from ceremonial uncleanness. Otherwise, they will die, for the impurity will defile my tabernacle that stands among them. These are the instructions for dealing with anyone who has a bodily discharge, a man who is unclean because of an emission of semen, or a woman during her menstrual period. It applies to any man or woman who has a bodily discharge and a man who has sexual intercourse with a woman who is ceremonially unclean. I think the stress of knowing when you are clean and unclean ceremonially is because you need to know when you can and cannot enter the tabernacle. If you enter the tabernacle while you are in an unclean period, not while you're in an unclean time in your day, in your week, in your month, in your whatever, you get burned by the fire of the presence of the Lord and you die. So this stress of hey, know when you are and when you're not. It's not saying that because you're unclean, feel guilty about that uncleanliness and feel like you must carry the weight of that uncleanliness on you and pray to the Lord for forgiveness. It's just saying no, try not to enter the presence of the Lord while you are unclean, because if you enter the presence of the Lord while you are unclean, that uncleanliness will devour you, will cause you to be devoured by the hyper cleanliness of the Lord. So know when you are and when you aren't, when you can and cannot enter into the Lord's presence. Not when you should and should not enter, because you can enter, but at peril. Okay, that was subject about, okay. So now we're in Psalms 34, a Psalm of David regarding the time he pretended to be insane in front of Abimelech, who sent him away. Abimelech wasn't he a pharaoh of Egypt who was angry when Abraham went all, no, this is my sister? And then it led him into sinning because he ended up sleeping with a married woman. I don't know. I know bits and pieces of David's story, so I never really know what is happening with him when these psalms are issued. But this basically, he pretends to be insane in front of Abimelech to get sent away. I will praise the Lord at all times. I will praise the Lord at all times. I will constantly speak his praises. I will boast only in the Lord. Let all who are helpless take heart. Come, let us tell of the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name together. I prayed to the Lord, and he answered me. He freed me from all my fears. Those who look to him for help will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. In my desperation, I prayed, and the Lord listened. He saved me from all my troubles. For the angel of the Lord is a guard. He surrounds and defends all who fear him. Taste and see the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in him. Fear the Lord, for his godly people. Fear the Lord, you godly people, for those who fear him will have all they need. Even strong young lions sometimes go hungry, but those who trust in the Lord will lack no good thing. Come, my children, and listen to me, and I will teach you to fear the Lord. Does anyone want to live a life that is long and prosperous? Then keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and work to maintain it. The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right. The ears are open to their cries for help. But the Lord turns his face against those who do evil. He will erase their memory from the earth. The Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. The righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to rescue each time. For the Lord protects the bones of the righteous. Not one of them is broken. Calamity will surely destroy the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be punished. But the Lord will redeem those who serve him. No one who takes refuge in him will be condemned. I still need to just to see how the pieces of David's story fits in with the Psalms that he's written, like the inspiration for them, I'm assuming. Just to get a broader idea. But yeah, that's today's reading. It was 2 of those chapters, and they really focused on knowing when you are knowing when you're unclean, and knowing how to reach and make yourself clean again. But it said nothing. Notice in all of that, it said nothing about you must carry the guilt of carry it with you. No, all right, when you did that, now you're unclean. And you must go get clean. You're unclean until evening, or you're unclean until da-da-da. But know that those are the reasons that you cannot make your presence, you cannot show yourself. You cannot enter the presence of the Lord directly. You're always within the Lord's presence, but you can't enter a space that's filled. It's a concentrated Lord presence, concentrated presence of God. You cannot enter all of that while you're unclean. So the directions and the instructions are to know, this is how you know whether you're clean or unclean. This is how you know whether to enter my space or not. Do this for your protection. Anyone who enters while unclean will die. Okay, so I look forward to tomorrow's reading because I want to get into the points where Israel is kind of redeems Israel. Does Israel make it into the tabernacle? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Spoiler alert, we know Israel fails a lot times. So I guess I'm just holding out a little bit of hope to see who can stand in the tabernacle. Who does it? All in all, thank you for joining me tonight, and I will see y'all on day 35. Good night.